Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. This podcast marks the second episode in our 10-episode series called Unveiling Tech Horizons. Throughout the series, we will revolutionize AEC consulting by delving into cutting-edge technologies such as AI, BIM, digital twinning, PM resourcing tools, and more. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Will Synnott, Director of Strategic Accounts at Disperse, about how Disperse is using technology to solve some of the biggest challenges facing the construction industry today. Will also talk about his journey transitioning from a career in engineering to a sales role within a technology company. So if you're interested in such a transition, please stay tuned because it really is a great episode. And with that, let's jump into today's episode. All right, it's now time for our conversation of the week with Will Synnott. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a lot to talk about today. So why don't we just hop right into it? So Will, could you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your career journey in the AEC world to date?
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. So I'm currently the Director of Strategic Accounts at Disperse, which is a construction technology company based in London, but we've got operations across the UK, Ireland, Middle East, and also in America. My background is actually in construction. I'm a chartered geologist or a geotechnical engineer. Essentially, I enjoy looking at foundations and putting piles in the ground. About 14 years of experience, worked on a number of big basements, big towers across London, and I've also worked on infrastructure projects across the UK and Ireland. Did a bit of work in the Middle East, but only briefly. And yeah, just kind of my background's, got a bachelor's in engineering geology, and kind of ended up playing around with a bit of construction technology, and then eventually got on board with Disperse. And I've been here for about a year and a half, and my role is essentially working on business development across the regions I mentioned, and just trying to push the Disperse platform and also just improvement in construction tech across the industry.
Right, and we're on the same page, Will, because that's what AEC Tech, the podcast here, is all about, right? And this interview I think is going to be really interesting, Will, because we've had a number of listeners, chime in with questions. Yeah. Hey, really interested in the construction technology space. I'm currently an architect, an engineer, a construction manager, right? Looking to make a switch, but I don't know how to do it. And I think your experience is going to lend well to answering some of those questions.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Nick. And I think I've had a number of people also reach out to me and ask similar questions. And if anyone's listening, just to kind of shout out now, feel free to message me. More than happy to have a conversation about this. But hopefully I can help answer some of those questions that they may have already.
Yeah, and let's give them a flavor for it. So Will, what inspired your transition from, right, basically geotechnical engineering now to technology sales, right? And how did that shift kind of impact your perspective on the industry?
Yeah. So it wasn't actually, if I'm being completely honest, it wasn't something that I was actually looking out for. Like my role to Disperse, essentially it came to me as an opportunity. But how I kind of got stuck into it, I've always been interested in technology. Most of my good friends I think everyone would probably say I'm a massive geek. I like to play around with different tech and always got the latest gizmos, so to speak. But when it came to actually construction, it actually really started during COVID, funny enough. When we were locked down, I was leading a team to go out and inspect some of the rail embankments across the UK. And so whilst we were inspecting, everyone would then huddle around the team's calls, looking at the photos we'd taken. And the iPhone's great. Digital phone is brilliant, great quality. But having to take all these photos across all these abutments and standing in the river and taking photos and whatnot, we just couldn't actually get a feel for the actual works that we were actually trying to improve. And I was like, no, just go to the next photo. And then we'd end up on the other side of the embankment. I was like, oh, no, go to the next photo. Anyway, it was just a mess. So I started exploring. I was like, well, how can I improve this? And 360 cameras, are relatively inexpensive now. And I think the one I picked up was like an Insta, and it was like $300-400. And I just took the plunge, luckily, fortunately, not COVID, not having to commute, save a bit of cash. And I was able to just buy it myself because going through the whole process of getting someone to approve it, we all know is difficult. And that's actually something I want to touch on at the very end. So I just did it. And immediately we saw the ROI. Like taking 360 photos was brilliant. But that then led me on to kind of like, well, how do I then get that and put that and share that? So I started looking at different platforms and found a platform called Kahlua, which is an online website, which basically it's a real estate putting photos on. I was like, well, I just need something to host it. Proper engineering. How can I make something just work with what's available and which is relatively inexpensive, like 15 or $5 a month, I think it was. And once I'd done that, I started to see like the benefits of actually being able to share it. Anyhow, that then came about. I showed my directors and I showed also Network Rail, who's they're the infrastructure company essentially that run our British rail across the country. They loved it. They bought it. So every project from then on, they were paying us like $2,000. Yeah, we're going to have this. But we were thinking, well, how can we improve this on all of the other projects? So we weren't just working on infrastructure projects. We were working on big residential, commercial projects in the UK. One of them is Battersea Power Station. Everyone's heard of it. It's on the cover of Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon. And essentially, we're just like, right, how can we use this tech? And we're like, what else is out there? And we started looking at Hollow Builder, QPix, all these different brands that are out there. And I started investigating. And essentially, we were looking at like the resident engineer of the future. I'm not sure if you guys have that over in your side of the pond, but over here in the UK, I'd go on board as the client side and basically inspect the piling works or inspect the piling works, the foundation works or the retaining walls, etc. So my role, I was like, well, how can we make this role better? And that then essentially led me on to Disperse. And cutting the story a little bit short, kind of fell in love with what they're doing. I was like, right, I want a bit of a flavor of this. And an opportunity came up and I took it and I started off as an account executive, which is essentially just someone who's supporting like one or two clients trying to build out the platform within them. And then here I am now, essentially leading the UK, Ireland, and America in terms of the business development. So it wasn't something I was looking for, but I'm so glad I have done because I'm now essentially working on billions of dollars worth of construction works. Okay. And I'm having a meaningful impact on the industry. Like I can see physically the changes that we're having in terms of the improvements on construction sites, the efficiency gains. And I've got clients that are coming back to me like, right, this is going to be standard on all our projects. And that type of reward to me it wasn't something I was ever expecting, but it's just something that I really enjoy. And I'm glad now I've taken the plunge to go into construction tech. Kind of got off on a bit of a tangent there, but I kind of wanted to summarize essentially where I am now and how I got there.
And you brought up a lot of great points. Well, one that stuck out to me was like the old engineering philosophy, right? You're just trying to make something work with what you have readily on hand. And in fact, with a lot of digital transformation, right, it's kind of how it starts, right? You just got to have a small proof of concept, low budget, make it work, and then kind of show everybody the vision. And then that's when you can really start getting some good buy-in and investment.
Yeah, exactly. And funny enough, actually just thinking about how you just said it is essentially what I did there was, prove to myself and to my team, my business that the proof of value, the buying this, is worth it. And then they then investing into it. That's essentially what I now do when I meet new clients or new opportunities where they've never heard of Disperse or they've never heard of this type of reality capture with benefits, so to speak. Like, right, well, let's do a trial. Let's showcase it, grapple together what we can and make it work. And then at the end of it, like, this is brilliant. Exactly the same with other engineers or other people that are listening in. I'm sure they've probably had similar moments where they've gone, right, how am I going to make these two spreadsheets work? How am I going to make this foundation design work? You end up trying to cobble together something, and ultimately the output is what you wanted it. But it's that path of like going from, the very beginning of like, how do you get this together? And then the output. And once you've done it once, the second, the third, the fourth time, you iterate and you just make it a bit better. And eventually you've got something that's a lean process. But by the time that's happened, you then need to add another workflow in. And I mean, that's ultimately what engineering is. You're constantly like moving the flywheel, so to speak, constantly adding new tech and just making everything processes better, faster. But you are ultimately always, tweaking things.
Absolutely. And speaking of Disperse, right, let's get into some of more of the specifics I'm interested to know. But how does the platform provide actionable data and insights to construction project teams, right? And I want you to touch on photos. This conversation we've had a couple times, right? Like photos versus data, and what does it actually mean to the end user?
Yeah, appreciate that. So Disperse is more than just a platform. It's more than, we are not a software provider. We are a service provider. We are essentially a turnkey solution, so to speak, or a service provider. Like we actually take, great deal and great credit or great we really want to make sure that our data that we provide to you is not just meaningful, but it's also correct and it's accurate. And if it's not, we will go back and correct it and make sure that it is. But going back to like you were saying about the photos, like, so in a sense, Disperse is a reality capture with lots of benefits. It's kind of like really dumb it down, or advanced reality capture. Okay. We take 360 photos. We take them. So we also have a team that go out on site, because that's a whole nother issue in the industry. Like, they're just not taking photos of a construction site. We know this, Nick. I've said this before. Like, the easiest ROI on a construction site is to just get someone to just solely just take photos, and you will have massive benefits during the works. But also, if you're a developer or client afterwards, or even if you're a general contractor afterwards, you have an actual decent document of all the photos. But where Disperse really excel at is actually, I've given the example before, Nick, is, we'll take, let's say, 1,000 photos across a residential build, okay? I don't care about 950 of those photos. I care about 50 photos, because those 50 photos is where all of your trades are working on right now. And I can show you where they're working at. We'll still take the other 950 photos, so you've got the records, but we will tell you where that work is. And this is the difference. A photo does not tell you anything. It shows you something that you have to tell yourself what it is, okay? What Disperse is doing is Disperse is looking at that photo and using this hybrid AI human method, okay, approach. And it's essentially providing it to you on a dashboard that's really simple for anyone to use, okay, to look at and go, right, trade 1, they're on floor 5. Trade 2, they're on floor 6. That's where I need to go. That's where I need to inspect, okay? And then where we're then taking it to the next step is we're checking the works to see, once they actually go in, are they actually incorrect? And are they actually to spec? Are they actually to drawings? Okay. If you have a BIM model, great, we'll check it. If you don't, I don't care. Okay. We all know that 3D BIM, or the actual BIM element, not all construction sites have a very detailed BIM model, but we can essentially see like what works go in. Is it correct? Yes, brilliant. If it's not, we'll flag it. And that's the extra bit. Like, that's the actionable bit. I am telling you, the general contractor, or you, the consultant, go out to floor 50 in room 5. Okay, there's a light bulb that was last week was installed. This week it's hanging. It's broken. Okay, that room may just be about to be handed over to the client. I have flagged it. Okay, it would have taken your person to go all the way up to that room to inspect all the rooms, and then hopefully they would have seen it. Okay, but we're not just then showing you that data. We're also taking all the data and seeing like, well, how much work have you actually done, and comparing it to your program as well. So there's so much more information from us, just a single 360 photo, that I think reality capture, it's great. We've been doing that for like 7 years, 8 years, but we're on, with us, we're taking everything to the next level, advanced reality capture, essentially.
And, diving even deeper, right? Like, we all know that on-site construction teams reporting, right? Everything's all over the place, right? It could be a Word document here, it could be an Excel file here. Often it's just a bunch of data, right? That's all over the place. Maybe we could use the term dispersed. I don't know if that's a good way to save it, right? Good way to say it, right? But how does Disperse then address kind of these issues of data being everywhere, and then improve pretty much it coming to this one place, making it, as you said, right, really easy for anyone to view?
Yeah, exactly. And one of my clients actually recently said one of the benefits of Disperse is that not only did you have all the photos and all the data and all the reports that you produce, everything in like one single location that we can go log in from anywhere in the world on your laptop. Okay, just need an internet connection. Essentially, like, you have got your construction site in your laptop. I mean, that's insane. And you can make actionable actions to people on your laptop. But what they really found was actually the consistency, okay, going throughout the project. Now, in most projects, you'll have a churn of people. People will come, people will go. You'll also have like the superstructure guys will come on, then they will leave, and you'll have a fit out team. Maybe the project exec might be the one person who kind of goes consistent. There'll be a few people that go throughout, but you're going to have a churn of people, okay? Disperse is there from the beginning, if you want us to, all the way to the very end. And with that one consistent, so as much as I think actually having a single source of data is really important, it's actually just having that consistency as well, that every time that that when you open it up, it's there, okay? Because we all talk about like having a document control center and having everything in one location, which is super valuable. You know, you have your Procore, you have your Aconex or whatever, but people have to upload it. Okay, people have to put information up there. People have to make sure that it's actually seeing the right hymn sheet, so to speak. Whereas Disperse is there all the time and has that data there. So I think it's a combination of two things, like both having everything in one location where everyone can get it, but it's then having the consistency every week that data is being updated.
Which is an excellent point. I really hadn't even thought about it, right? Because like you said, the churn of different trades and different people that are coming through any large construction project can really make, you know, data consistency and organization of data a real challenge.
Massively, yeah. And just to kind of like touch on that a little bit as well, some of my clients also talk about the reports. They go straight to the end. They talk about, I want a really nice dashboard. I want to be able to see everything. And I get that because, I mean, we're all visual people as well. We want to be able to see things, and we're engineers, okay? You know, we're logic thinkers. We can see a trend line and I can make a judgment call very quickly, like this isn't looking good. You know, this is not, without even seeing like the numbers, you can just tell, okay, that something's wrong. Okay. But they're so focused on the actual reports, on the expressing side of the data, but they're not actually thinking about the capturing data, you know, the organizing the data, okay, and actually getting that data so that, you know, is this information correct? You know, because if a few people make a few mistakes wrong, or if someone was away on annual leave, or they were just late, or a trade's not been able to hand in their report at the right time, those small things start to add up, and that can make a big difference in terms of your accuracy of that report. And then you seeing that dashboard, right? I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to send trade one to the next floor, but you're wrong because the information that you were fed was incorrect. So we spend a lot of time thinking of like the output, the expressed, like the actual data at the end, but we don't actually think about the collection of the data. I can't remember the author's name, but he talks about this thing called code, capture, organizing, distill, and express. It's a great book. I think it's called Second Brain, or How to Build a Second Brain. Highly recommend it to your listeners. But essentially, we all live in it right now. Your mobile phone, everything you have is essentially a second brain. But I do think like digital platforms like Disperse and others, we are that digital brain of a construction site. You just have to get better at capturing that information, organizing it, and getting it ready, and then to be able to express it, if that makes sense.
Which, right, a 360 camera is great for, because there's really no mistaking or, you know, misinterpretation, right? Because a well-trained system, which we'll get into a second here, all it's doing is reporting the facts back to you, right? Let's say walk the site with a 360 camera, and, you know, immediately you're being told, hey, there's work going on here, this might be incorrect, right? And there's a number of different systems, I'm sure, but I'm curious. And I'm really curious to learn more about that human AI interaction you spoke of earlier, right? So how does that work? Can you give us more insight into like how that all meshes together?
Yeah. So the AI system that we use the approach that we take is very much AI and a human element. So we actually have architects and engineers in-house who do a big grunt load of the work in terms of actually seeing what works have actually happened. We're still using the AI as a way of, we're training it essentially, the computer vision, what are, you know, doors, what are stud works, what are different types of cabling, etc. We've got around 680 different types of components that we've trained the model, or internally we can essentially track. So essentially anything that is visual on your construction site, whether it's superstructure, if it's during fit out, if it's the roof, it's the envelope, if it's the basement works, the MEP, we can track that as long as it's visual. I mean, it makes sense. We need a camera. So there's some elements obviously we can't, but ultimately majority elements are visual. And what our system is doing, we're using the AI to kind of speed up that process. You think on some construction sites, we're taking 300, 400, 500 photos a week. On other projects, we're taking like 10,000 photos a week. Okay, it's ridiculous. We were on a project in 19 Elms with Multiplex in London. In terms of I think in square meters, it's about 70,000 square meters. That's like 700 to 800,000 square feet. It takes us 2 days to capture all the photos, but within 48 hours, the team, not only do they have all those photos located in the correct location, because we take the same photo in the same location every week. Okay, we don't walk around. And there's another reason why, and I can talk about that in a second, but ultimately your team is getting all this data, and yeah, it's just a wealth of information that we provide on a consistent basis.
And, and that's really amazing because so many people, with the rise of AI really becoming popular in mainstream media, it's really, hey, is this going to take my job? Right? What does this hold for the future? But what I found a lot, and it sounds like you found the same, is there's really this AI human partnership
Correct.
where
Yeah.
let's just use professional engineers, for example, right? The law requires PEs in the States to sign and seal documents, right? That's not going away anytime soon.
Correct.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity for individuals in AEC to take control of kind of what happens next by utilizing AI. Now, things change and things can get pretty crazy pretty quickly, but to date, I really see it as more of a partnership and a tool rather than something to fear.
Absolutely, 100%. And our AI system isn't there yet, and we need the human system to be able to help actually understand all these components. We need billions of more photos before the machine actually ever gets that. But kind of just addressing one of the points you mentioned about like AI isn't take my job. It really isn't going to take your job. It's going to leverage your job to make you do even more. And this is like I wrote an article about this that we've essentially created the digital construction digger or construction driver. Sorry, digger driver. That's it. And what I mean by that is like the digger, the excavator, the crane, they are all construction technologies. The spreadsheet that you're using right now, to a degree, is a construction technology. It's just part of the woodwork. Okay. If I took a spreadsheet away from you right now, Nick, I guarantee you would not be able to do your job. I couldn't do my job as when I was designing piles because I had a pile spreadsheet that did everything I needed to do, basically. I still did the checks. I still signed when I came to sign off. I still had a handwritten document. But when I was iterating, I was using my spreadsheet to do, many different types of size of piles to then narrow it down to like one or two sizes and then iterate and then check it. Okay. That's essentially what Disperse, if you think like there's a whole set of technologies here that QSs, schedulers, site managers, package managers, every single person on a construction site benefits from this. Okay. They just need to learn how to drive the technology. Okay. So like using example, like the 360 technology that we just talked about, really basic. Like you could send someone out to a site, take all the photos, and then you remotely could look at those, plan your schedule out and go, right, I didn't see any real issues. I'll flag it. I'll send out maybe one of my subordinates that's got like 5 years experience. I'll send them, they can check that. It wasn't worth my time. Whereas on this other site, your graduate or your assistant's gone around taking photos and go, oh my gosh, looks terrible. I need to go do that. You have benefited from the leverage of having those 360 cameras. Okay. All right. You've then been able to allocate your resources appropriately. The step up, which with AI and platforms like Disperse and others, is that now you can essentially track it. You can see all those issues, and they are then telling you what those issues are. You, as a PE, still have to go out potentially and physically look at them, but at least you now know with better certainty like what are those issues are. We're essentially giving a construction site a tutorial of all your issues and a tutorial of what to do this week. Right. And some people think, oh, that's, I want to get my guys out on site. 100%. You need to get your guys out on site, but at least you're sending them to places where they actually make meaningful change. I've been amazed by how many construction sites where the site cabin to get to the actual site is like a 10-minute walk. I'm like, that surely just put that there and like that's a massive saving. But if you don't use 360 cameras or any other type of tech, if you can reduce that wasted time, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back, 20 minutes, you can save that a few times a week. You've just saved a couple of hours. These small things just add up. Okay. And that's where leveraging different types of construction technology like Disperse and others, if you're listening to this, you will become a super user and you will level yourself up far quicker against your peers and your colleagues than if they're not using it.
And I'm right there with you, Will. And to pull an example from the concrete restoration side of the business, right? That we're in. I'm a proponent, right? If you're the engineer in charge, right, you should be walking pretty much every site now. Should you walk it for an hour and maybe pass it down to another engineer that you're training, or maybe it's a good fit for a technician who, smart person, doesn't need to be a professional engineer, and you're overseeing their work. But like you said, you're spending the majority of your time on these big, hairy problems that require your expertise, and then letting other competent, just maybe less experienced individuals handle everything else. And I think it's great because before it's a photo that's no context. I don't know where this was taken. I don't understand. Now compare that to a 360 walk or 360 photos that show the majority of what you need right from your desktop.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you can remotely access it from anywhere. And I think that's also just the beauty of the technology now. But it's enabling more people, especially in the construction industry, because we have a whole issue with mental health issues. I don't want to drag onto this too much, but it's quite important. I think that guys on construction site, they are on site constantly, and like their freedom is very limited. I know over here in the UK during lockdown, for a small period of time, everyone was at home, but construction sites started up straight away, and there were safety principles that were in play, but they were still working. But with platforms like Disperse and also other 360, at least they could maybe work 1 day a week at home, okay, or maybe every 2 weeks they'll have 1 day off. But those small little things, those small like extra days, is what will help, I think, change the industry to give more flexibility and more ability for the team to the industry to have that flexibility.
And flexibility and really improving the state of everyone involved in the industry is right. That's one benefit that technology has bestowed upon us. But what else do you see kind of forthcoming, right? Especially in the next 5 to 10 years, where we expect, right, this pace of construction technology to really pick up even more than it has in the past 5.
Yeah. It's growing at an exponential rate. I mean, we're all going to say that, but it really is. And like, it worries me that we are not teaching ourselves how to teach ourselves to learn new technology and to implement it into your workflow, if that makes sense. So let me give you an example. Like, going back to that example I used very early about I started taking 360 photos, I showcased it, but I bought the camera. Okay, I knew that if I went to my senior leadership and asked for £400 or £500 to buy it, I would have had to do a business plan. I have to do a load of stuff. It would have been several weeks, and I would have missed the opportunity. Okay, and I just did it, and it was maybe a bit reckless, but I did it because I knew that this was gonna have benefits, and it did. Okay, but I taught myself. Okay, and I've learned, especially in the role that I'm in now, in sales, in business development, in marketing, that I have to teach myself these new skills. And that's my concern in the future, is like, if you are not embracing this type of technology and like learning this bit of technology and then the next bit of technology, you are going to be left behind. It's going to be a real big issue in the industry if you are not teaching yourself. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I do think the industry is going to change, and like there's a wealth of new people coming through, so to speak, that will have this betterment of like how to learn on the go. Even just like, I'm just using an example. My kids, I've got a 7 and 5-year-old, love Minecraft. It's amazing how quick and good they are. But you know what? They have taught themselves essentially how to play those games, and they are, anyone's listening here, they're really detailed. Incredible amount of detail you can go into. And so if anyone who's got nephews or kids that have got it, just watch them and just play and see how they learn and they teach themselves. That is what I think we're going to see, more people learning and just embracing technology in like the next 5 to 10 years. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I really do hope, because otherwise I think we're really going to see a big shift in like where the capabilities do go to. I do see augmented reality and mixed reality eventually coming in. I'm a bit hesitant to say that because I have been a bit critical on it in the past. But at the same time, I do think there is a platform there. And I think it's going to be, I hate to say it, but I think Apple Vision Pro, their goggles that they've got, if you look at some of the stuff that they're doing and look at, they've got some software out there. Polycam is a great one if you've got an iPhone Pro, to check it out. But they are actually setting up so that when they scan things, that they're putting in the fundamentals, so what objects are. So essentially everything that we see that in fit out, they are going to know what it is. That foundation, I think it is, they will be able to then apply it to construction. And I think they will have the ability, that's my gut feeling. So augmented reality, yes, in the future, but it just needs to be actionable. I don't see the point of it right now because it doesn't tell you anything. You have to tell yourself it. Anyway, I've got a few other ideas as well, but I appreciate we might not have much time.
And, to that, what I see, right, what you've mentioned was a really great opportunity, right? Because there are those that are going to, right, tinker and experiment and succeed, right? And for those types of people, it's a great opportunity because there are others who just, for whatever reason, just decide to that they're going to keep doing things the way they have, which in some cases is just fine. And others, it means they're going to, lose out on some significant progress for it. Those who do want to move forward and maybe take a path similar to yours, what are the most crucial skills or knowledge areas for making a transition from whether it be like engineering or architecture or construction to a career in construction tech?
Yeah. So I think for anything, I always say that you need to continuously continue to be curious. Like you need to constantly like, what is that? And ask questions. Like I consider myself to be really curious with literally everything. There's not many subjects that I haven't really done some research. I've watched YouTube videos on. I've learned about the majority of things. There's a few things I'm really passionate about, which is obviously construction technology, engineering. I'm also big into health, and I like to like learn those type of things. So I definitely think if anyone's listening, if you find that you're actually just sitting there watching YouTube and actually into construction tech and you enjoy learning, that's the type of bug that you need. And I think actually we all need that because I think in the future, going back to that 5, 10, 20 years time, the career path that you've got right now, especially if you've just come out of university and you've got your bachelor's, in 10 years time, you will probably need to change roles and you will need to change a whole new career, whether you go back to school or whatnot and learn. But I think that's going to become far more common because of just the rate of acceleration in tech. You are going to physically have to just learn on the job and have to actually just do it because there are just so many new abundant jobs that I've just created. I mean, like, look, it was only last year, ChatGPT came out in November with 3.5 or whatever it was. And within the last 9, 10 months, there are hundreds of new AI companies all popping up using ChatGPT. It has created a whole new wealth of technologies out of nowhere because they're leveraging what ChatGPT did. So you just think like when other technologies do come on, whether it's Apple Provision or something, we come out with something or whatever, there will just be these new opportunities that arise that you could then jump onto. And if anyone's interested in looking at construction tech, if you're at a practice right now or an engineering practice or architect, ask right now, what are you doing internally? And what are you doing in terms of like embracing new tech? It sounds really primitive and simple, but just ask, like, what are they doing? If they're not doing anything, I highly recommend you leading it. Just take it. And if they say no, just do it anyway. Just do it. Just get in there, get stuck in and start researching because if you want to go into construction tech and if you want to go into sales or in some sort of like realm that I'm in, you have to be driven. Okay. And I have to do, my calendar is essentially up to what I want to do. I have to drive myself to get my opportunities. And that's the same as if you move on to, especially if it's a startup. Okay. Because these startups, the startup environment, you have to drive. It's definitely crazy. There's a lot of things there's pros and cons to it, which I've only learned now. But you as a person have to be like drive yourself. So starting off in your own company you work at and say, yeah, I'm going to start up a technology innovation company, right? Then I would then start asking all your peers, what are the challenges you have? You may have a challenge yourself. You may have a challenge that you don't know how to code, or you might have this one bit of software that you don't know how to talk to the other. Or learn, document it, talk about it, find out, how it's improved, how can you iterate, work out the ROI, the return on investment in terms of what time it took you to and what your output. Was it worth it? Probably not, but the learning curve was, okay? The learning curve was, and then take that and say, right, how can I now replicate that on all these other projects? Or maybe my other team over here, they don't know about it. And if you can start doing that, you're going to get a bug for it. And then you have got essentially, if you ever go to a construction tech and say, I did this, I started a tech company, tech innovation in my company, I innovated this, we did all these things, I learned on the way, we did these failures, these positives, I'd give you a job. The fact that you show the enthusiasm, the drive to actually do it and continuously learn, I think that's fantastic. So I don't know whether that's something that I've again kind of gone from subject, but if you've got that type of attitude, I think you're then right step for at least working with me.
Right. And we'll call it the 3 C's that you mentioned earlier. And you might need to help me out, but you're, continuously learning, right? You're curious. Yeah. And what's the last one?
Well, I do continuously continue to learn. Continuously continue to learn, but also like be curious. And you want to be. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And that's like that you mentioned that startup environment because things are so dynamic, customer needs are constantly changing, right? Your market strategy may change just based on the feedback you're getting. By having that skill set to just be continuously able to take in information, make decisions, and ultimately just be curious, right? it's a great fit. And I mean,
massively, yeah.
Frankly, that's a lot of what engineering is. And so if you're listening, right, and you want to make that transition, please reach out to Will and pick his brain, because there's a opportunity is abundant.
I think if I just want to pick one little cast of warning, I want to be honest, because I've given you some positives and like, oh, it's brilliant when I do it. And I hate for someone to jump in and then not necessarily know the negatives. If you're in a startup, it is a startup. And so there is ultimately it's a business which has a higher risk than what it would be than you probably going from a more traditional company that's been there for, bricks and mortar for years, for decades. So just to bear in mind, I think I transitioned to the business I was when I was 35, I think, 35. And I had kids and I had a mortgage. And it was like, do I do this? Because I could go down the career path at the company I was at, Robert Bird Group. I'll be a director eventually, hunky dory, it'll be all fine. But I chose and I took that challenge to do it. And it has been a risk that I have accepted. So it's just something that it's worth like considering, like, is this the thing for me to do? I personally think yes, because you never know if you didn't try it. And also, if you've already got the flavor, you want to do this type of stuff, do it. Because just take that energy and put it in something that ultimately you are creating something that's fresh, that's new. And that's essentially what Disperse is. Even like the platform itself is elements that we keep adding. Although I'm not the direct person who's making the product, I feel like I'm a part of it and I can have my say in it. And it's something different than just necessarily just designing piles all the time.
Absolutely. And well, as we kind of wrap up today, thank you again so much for joining us. But is there any last advice or words of wisdom you'd like to give to the audience for today?
I think the key element is just, like I said, just continuously learn, be curious. It sounds so cheesy when I say it out loud, but for me at least, it has been what has helped me get to where I am. And I really do feel like I've got a different trajectory where I'm going in my career. And I think it's down to those elements, and it's down to working at Disperse and in a different environment. And hey, in 3-4 years' time, I might be somewhere else, but I think I will still be in this field, hopefully working on creating new tech. So like I said, if anyone does want to talk about going into this type of roles, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to arrange a chat and to talk about it further.
You read my mind. I was going to ask if anybody wants to reach out, right? Besides LinkedIn, is there any other ways they should get in touch with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably my primary, or my email address is will@disperse.io. More than happy to reach out. My Calendly is open on LinkedIn, which is at Will Synnott. My surname, for those listening, is SYNNOTT. Irish. I am also half American, although I've just got this really strong English accent. Lived over here majority of my life.
Excellent. And for those listening, right, you'll be able to find Will's information and contact info in the show notes. So if you don't have a pen handy, don't worry, we've got you. But Will, again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolute pleasure, Nick. And yeah, thanks again. All the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Till next time. Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.